it's easier.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Syosset Library's trending program for the evening. I'm Jen, and I am a library aide here at Syosset Library. I work in media and programming and do all that kind of stuff. I'm here with my co-host, Stacy, today. You want to say hi, Stacy?
Hello, I'm a librarian at the library.
And yeah, we're here with a very special author tonight. But before we get started, just want to do like a brief little introduction, lay some ground rules. This is a very relaxed and laid back space. It is also a safe space though, so we will not be tolerating any racism or sexism or homophobia or any of those, not nice things that we don't want in this space. Anybody who engages in any of those things will be ejected. So, don't bother. Don't bother doing it. Also, you'll notice that we are in webinar mode, which means that you can see all of us and you can hear all of us, but we can't see or hear you. That means that you can submit your questions in one of two ways. You can use the chat feature, and Stacy and I will be monitoring the questions that come in there. You can also just if you want to provide some commentary, just like talk, chat, respond to things that we're saying, ask questions. Like, we'd like to have a nice friendly chat going. There's also the Q&A feature, which you'll see at the bottom of your screen, and you could submit them there too. So on that note, let's talk about our visiting author. She's incredibly prolific, lots of really great series, and today we are here to celebrate the, let's call it the dawn of a new series, of a duology. It's a very exciting post-apocalyptic, supernatural type thriller with lots of really interesting things going on. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce you to PC Cast.
Thank you so much, Jen. Thank you, Stacy. I appreciate you guys. I love being with you. I wish I could actually physically be there, of course.
Yeah, that would be nice, but
maybe next year, right? Maybe next year. But
yeah.
thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to it.
Oh, me too. Yeah, so audience, you don't have to save your questions to the end whenever you want, just to throw them in there. In the meantime, I'll get us started because I have plenty as well. A super easy softball question just to get us started. Do you want to tell us a little bit about Into the Mist?
Well, Into the Mist is, well, okay. I'll tell you why I wrote it, and it will tell you a lot about the book then. Okay. So let's go back, but only in our minds and only for a moment, to very early spring 2020, the beginning of the Rona. And I had just had surgery on my shoulder. I had a horrible horse injury. And so I had surgery in February, mid-February for my shoulder. And then everything locked down, of course, in March. So I was immune compromised. And then we have the Rona and, terrified. And then here in the Pacific Northwest, in just a few months from that, we're still like freaked out about the Rona and everything. But we had we had the worst wildfires. That was the worst summer of the wildfires. It's awful. Now, we were fortunate here in the Portland area that the fires didn't reach us. We were under a warning for them, but they didn't reach us, thankfully. But what did reach us was the smoke. And we were blanketed for weeks. I have a really bad history with fire. I don't know if you guys can see this because I'm really old now, but I have a scar here on my face. I have scars on the back. You can't see them here because I'm tattooed over them, but I have scars on the back of my hand, my knee, my foot. I was in a my family and I were in a really bad fire when I was 4 years old. And so I have a not pleasant reaction to being hemmed in by smoke. So we're hemmed in by smoke, we're hemmed in by the Rona, and I'm also in pain because of my shoulder injury, and doing PT, virtually it's a pain in the ass. Okay, I did it, but because you're not going to lift my arm up now. But I did it, but so it was awful. So during all this stuff, I needed to write, of course, because it's my job, and I couldn't write. I see everything like a moving picture inside my head. I couldn't see anything. Everything was gone. And a person in publishing told me not to stress about it. It was existential dread from the Rona and everything. Well, I couldn't help but stress out about it, especially since my alternative was sitting in front of the TV, drinking wine, eating cheese, and I don't eat dairy. Okay. I don't eat meat either, but I don't eat dairy, but I thought it was the end of the world. So eat cheese. And so I was eating cheese, drinking wine, smoking weed, and watching bad TV. I was trying to, and good TV too. I was trying to get through the existential dread. And somewhere in the middle of the smoke apocalypse, when we were rolling up towels and shoving them underneath our doors, and we were boiling big pots. If you boil a big pot with like cedar and spearmint and lavender and stuff in it, it helps, attaches to the smoke molecules and makes it easier to breathe inside. We're doing all that. Somewhere in the middle of that, I remembered. I was like, wait a second. You wrote your first book, the first one that got published, because you were trying to escape from a terrible marriage. That was existential dread. And I still managed to write through it and escape from it. And I was like, and that book, that is now Divine by Mistake, that book was like the exact book I wanted to read during that time of my life. So I thought, do that again. I put aside all my other work, and that I couldn't do anyway, right? Because I couldn't see the moving things in my head. And I decided to write my own apocalypse, the PC apocalypse. So I love apocalyptic novels. I love them. And I like apocalyptic movies and series and stuff too. But I very rarely see myself reflected in the characters. So, and when I wrote Divine by Mistake all those years ago, it's high fantasy. And again, I wrote that because I loved fantasy, but very rarely saw myself in the characters. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to do that again. I'm going to write an awesome PC apocalypse. It's going to have my favorite people in it, which are a whole bunch of high school teachers. And I taught for 15 years. I'm from a whole family of teachers. It's a genetic deficiency or something. Okay. But it probably happens in the librarian world too, right, you guys? Yep. But I just thought I'm going to people it with teachers. I'm going to set it here in Oregon. It starts right outside Timberline, but I'm like pointing vaguely towards Timberline. I don't know. But people it with Oklahoma school teachers, which, you know, I was an Oklahoma public school teacher, and then make this apocalypse happen that has a biological element to it, but it also has a magical element to it. You start getting a bunch of that towards the end of book 1, but I'm almost done with book 2 right now, Out of the Dawn, and you get to see a whole lot more of that in book 2 because the earth herself is awakening. So that's what I did. I wrote the PC apocalypse. It has wine, women, and weed in it. I have mentioned cheese, but that's a lot harder to do during an apocalypse where you don't have a bunch of electricity and stuff. So we're going to do goat cheese. That was my choice. Anyway, that's really, people are like, I see things as like, it's a feminist treatise. No, it's not. It's an escape from existential dread. Okay. It's just run by women. And even though it's an apocalypse and there's lots of death and destruction and stuff, there's also a lot of laughter, and there's love, and there's a good time. And it's also going to make you laugh. It'll make you laugh and cry. Oh my God, just like most of my books. So that's it. That's what Into the Mist and Out of the Dawn are.
All right, that's amazing. Yeah, I love this book, and I'm so excited for the second one. And we have lots of questions coming in. Do you want to just take them back and forth, Stacey? Do you want to?
Yeah, we could do back and forth. And just before we go into any attendees, if you want to be anonymous because you're a little shy, you don't want us to know you're asking the question, you could ask anonymously on Q&A. Just, you know, throwing that out there. So if you want to go first, Jen, you can.
Sure. Okay, so here are some broad questions from Madeline. What book or series that you wrote did you have the most fun making?
That's a really hard question because authors have to spend a long time with books and series and characters. And I think sometimes that our readers get the impression that we don't, I don't think all the time readers don't understand that we spend so much time with these worlds and these characters that you have to really, or I at least, and I can speak for Kristen too, my daughter, because she and I've talked about this, and a lot of my author friends and I've talked about it. It is so difficult to write a book that you're not really in tune with the characters in the world, you're not enjoying yourself. I've only done it like 2 times that, and I've written what, almost 50 books or something. And I don't know, math is not my thing, so I should count them. But so it's different levels of how much I like it. And usually that's directly influenced by what I'm writing at the moment, especially if I'm almost done with it. And I am almost done with the second book here, Out of the Dawn. But I love this world because I created my PC apocalypse. I love it. House of Night is always like going home to go back to that. Like when I moved from the original series, and then there was a several year break, and then I realized one day, because I think Kristen told me that we're coming up on the 10th anniversary of Marked. And that's when I got the idea, well, I should write something. And so I wrote Love, Lost, Forgotten, and Found. You guys, it took me forever to start Loved because I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to pick up their voices again. And Kristen kept telling me, it'll be fine, just write. It'll be fine, just write. And I was like, I don't know. I was very, very whiny and angsty about it. And then I sat down and started into the House of Night world again. And I was like, oh my God, it's like coming home. I know all of this. This is like, they're all talking to me again. And of course my daughter was like, I told you so. But that world's like coming home to me. I think the most fun I have on several different levels is probably my Tales of a New World, the fantasy series that I have, Moon Chosen, Sun Warrior, Wind Rider, and Earth Called. There's a title change. It was Earth Walker, and it's Earth Called that'll be out in the spring. But there's something about that world. It's another post-apocalyptic world, only that world is like 500 years post-apocalypse. And I love that world. I also love it because I people it with like all of my animals and animals that are no longer with me too. So it's like they're alive again when I'm back in that world. So that world's a lot of fun for me. So I don't really have an answer because I love them all. I'm sorry.
We have another question, also from Madeline, of what's your least favorite part about the writing process?
Ugh, outlining. Ugh, I hate outlining. I used to never even do it. I didn't hardly outline anything in the House of Night. Big mistake, because I wrote myself into a lot of plot corners that caused me a bunch of stress. But I don't like to outline at all. I usually get a beginning scene and an ending scene of the book, and then I'll get like 2 or 3 scenes in the middle. With these books, with the apocalypse books, Into the Mist and Out of the Dawn, I got the beginning scene of Into the Mist, the ending scene of Into the Mist, the ending scene of Out of the Dawn, a bunch of in the middle scenes of the first book, and then I got this amazing scene in the second book too. But Kristen, I have to outline when I write with Kristen. We don't just outline the whole book or booksa. We outline chapter by chapter. Oh my God, it's so awful. I would rather write 150,000 words than do that. It takes weeks too. Although it's fun to do it with my daughter, but still it takes a long time. But I do not like it. I do it more and more now. And even on my solo books, I actually outline, not chapter by chapter like Kristen does, not unless I get something really get stuck. And Kristen is a fantastic editor. So then I'll call her, and usually she's like, you need to outline. I'm like, oh my God, I knew you were going to say that. But I don't like outlining at all. But I do it.
I identify with that so hard. Outlining is really, really difficult. Okay, one more. Do you ever write inside jokes into your books? And what is your favorite one?
Constantly. Okay. Constantly. People who know me, like family and close friends, I do a lot that amuses me in my books. I don't know if I can't, oh God, there's a huge one of Into the Mist. if you guys read Into the Mist, when Mercury, the lead character, is talking to Stella, her best friend, and they're talking about Mercury's brothers. Oh my God, no, my brother wouldn't be watching this. Any of them, none of them are. But I'm actually talking about my brothers. And what what Mercury says to Stella, what they talk about, it's true. I'm not even going to tell you, because if he hears this, I'm going to get in a lot of trouble. But it's true, and it's my other brother, because I'm talking to both of them. I have 3 brothers, but I'm talking to about 2 of them in here. He was like, I told him, he's like, ooh, you are in so much trouble. I'm like, I know, maybe he won't read it, but he reads all my books, so he's going to. Yes, I do that in all my books, because you spend a long time with them, and you might as well amuse yourself too.
It's entertaining. Because I like to do that, because sometimes I feel like as a reader you could pick up on it. Sometimes you're like, ooh, like, and other times it's just nice to find out afterwards, like, oh wow, that was inspired by something that happened, or
Really
sentimental.
Yeah. I use a lot of things that happen in real life too, only, and this is something that I just talked about on our subscription website, the castauthors.com thing. We do a behind the scenes thing feature every month for our subscription people. And I talked about using fictionally things that have happened to you and making them work in your manuscript, in your book. And I gave an example from Divine by Choice. There's a big scene in there that happens with the heroine's father. And the heroine's father is quite clearly my dad. And when he breaks through the ice and trying to save these pups and this kind of stuff, that was all real. A whole bunch of that really happened. But I also said, as we're talking behind the scenes, and as I said in my classroom when I used to teach, don't get bogged down by fact when you do that. If you are using something that happened in your life in your fiction, remember that people don't care whether it's real or not. You're not writing an autobiography, you're writing fiction. So use it as a springboard to make something more interesting, to make something more adventurous, scarier, sexier, however you want to do it. But use it as a springboard. Don't get, my creative writing students would turn in pieces to me all the time. And I'd say, okay, this is a really good start, but the end's really lacking. And how about if you try this, this, or this? And many times they'd come back to me and say, but that's not the way it happened. And I'm like, but you're not writing fact. You're not writing nonfiction, you're writing fiction. So make it adventurous, make it better.
Ooh, I like that, make it better.
Yeah.
That's super interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
It can be a fun thing to do too, like something happens to you and it's like, okay, let me make this better. Look at me changing history, my own history, making it cooler or less frightening or even more frightening. Or a happily ever after that didn't happen.
For sure. Speaking of happily ever afters, there's a great question from the audience from Arcadia Noctis, which is a cool name. Are there any children's stories that influenced you as a writer?
A whole lot of them. I can't remember ever not being able to read or write. Like I wrote my first book in first grade. I've always been just a massive reader. I was one of those little girls who never went anywhere without a book. And I started carrying a purse when I was really young, just so I could shove a book in it. I read everything. I read like every horse book I swear I could get my hands on. Every dog book. My favorite was The Incredible Journey, the one that they made. What's the movie name? With Shadow.
Homeward Bound.
Homeward Bound.
Yeah.
Sorry, I got very excited.
Yes. The book, The Incredible Journey, and I'm sorry I can't remember the wonderful woman's name who wrote it right now. I read it when I was really young as a chapter book, and like a million times. That was one of my favorite. And the 101 Dalmatians movie, their book too. I read that like a zillion times when I was young. And my dad gave me Tolkien when I was about 9. and I started reading like fantasy and science fiction. I was very, very young. I found Anne McCaffrey and Pern when I was 13. And that was the first time when I read Queen McCaffrey. That was the first time that I realized that a woman could not just author, but she could also star in a fantasy novel. So that was that Anne McCaffrey is probably responsible for me sitting here today.
That's awesome. Yeah, those books were so influential for so many people, and they've produced like just so many that's how you know like a great book. It's not only like a great work for one author, but it just like produces other great authors in its wake, you know.
It's always such a compliment when someone says to me, your books made me want to write. It's just it always just really moves me, especially as a retired English teacher. That if they say, people have said to me that House of Night is the reason that I read, and that's just, you couldn't give me a better compliment than that.
Absolutely. Can we talk a little bit about your main character? Because I loved her, and I think she was such a great viewpoint character for Into the Mist. And one of my favorite things about her actually is that she's pagan, and you don't see a lot of pagan protagonists in things. And I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit about that, like what your thinking was and what went into her and her beliefs and how it shapes her actions in the book. Like, I'm super curious about all that.
Well, it's kind of embarrassing, but okay, when you remember the story about why I wrote Into the Mist and Out of the Dawn, and was peopling it with like my favorite teachers and stuff, I just thought, well, shit, I'll just put myself in there. My teacher self in there, my younger teacher self in there. So Mercury's beliefs very much echo my beliefs. Mercury echoes me a lot. Thank you for liking her. We'd be girlfriends, okay? It's the same thing I did with Divine by Mistake too. When I started those Divine by Mistake, by Choice, and by Blood, Shannon Parker was basically just a version of me back then, because I didn't know how to write anyone else but me then as a point of view character. But now clearly I do. But this time I purposely made her very much like teacher me, because I was doing a whole nostalgic, it wasn't just teacher me, it's the other teachers are people too. But not any, their names are not similar. Their names don't sound like who they really are. And I'll never tell either. But my favorite principal, Debbie Sparks, who's on the Facebook. Hi Sparky, if you're there. She's read it. I sent her the ARC. She and I are still really good friends. I sent her the ARC and she was like, ooh, I know who you were talking about. I know who these people are. Like, oh, okay. But yeah, that's Mercury's beliefs reflect a lot of my beliefs, and her reactions to Karen, the Christian, very Christian. There is more than just Karen in the book's Christian, like Imani's a Christian. But Karen's very stereotypical, conservative, Bible Belt, Oklahoma, blinders on Christian. And Mercury's reaction to her is much like my reaction to that kind of stuff. And I think that it's how I would react as well during an apocalypse.
I love that. And that makes so much sense. And I'm glad that you brought Karen up too, because I think that, she's super interesting in her own right. And what I do love about like how you craft her and how Mercury relates to her is that like, even though she's clearly like an antagonist to Mercury and her beliefs, she's not like a one-dimensional villain, or she's not like she has some like, Christian tropes, and there are some things that she believes that are unfriendly, and she's like narrow-minded and like not very accepting of other people, but she's not like a cartoon villain, like she's more thoughtful.
And she developed, actually Karen developed accidentally. I started to really like Karen, and I didn't mean to. The part in the book where, remember, I don't want to say too much, but the part at Timberline where one of our younger characters, mom takes off, that part, I meant, as I was roughly outlining it, I meant for Karen to leave with that person, for Karen to like take up a quest to help her find her husband and to, you know, whatever. And I liked, and then, but before that, I wrote that scene with all of them together in the lodge room that night where they all drink wine and they all find out about some of their special abilities that are starting. And Karen, when Karen started to say about how she'd been, you know, under the thumb of the patriarch for so long, and that she started to kind of see that and kind of admit some of that and start to process through some of that, I really started to like Karen, just like Mercury and Stella really start liking Karen. And in book 2, Karen's one of my favorite characters now. And in book 2, I will tell you that she finally dances. And it is, I think, my favorite scene in the entire book, in both books. I love the scene. That scene where Karen dances in book 2 is the scene that I had in my head before I started writing book 1. It was so much fun to write. I loved it so much, and Karen was a huge part of it. So she developed, that happens to me quite often with my characters. I want them to do one thing, and then as they develop their personalities, as I write them, they just are like, nah, and they just do their own thing. Like I created Stark for Stevie Ray, and Stark met Zoe and he was like, no, she's mine. I was like, what the hell is going on? But yeah, it happens quite often.
Yeah, that is actually super interesting to me, and that like leads me to another question of yeah, like when the story starts to kind of do that, or the characters start to, you know, do things in their own right, like how often do you kind of give into that, and how often do you try to like get the reins back, you know, like like when do you experiment and when do you not? Like when do you depart from the plan, and when do you like go into or when do you stick to what you planned, if that
Good
makes any
question.
sense?
When I'm writing by myself, almost 100% of the time I do. When I'm writing with Kristen, we have that chapter by chapter outline. We even write dialogue in our outline. That's how, like, really, see, my cat's right behind me. She must be, I kind of expected her to,
Aw.
her giant, so she's a huge Maine Coon. I expected her, but I think it's getting kind of dark back there, so I think she's probably asleep. But wait, where was I? Oh, when Kristen and I started the chapter by chapter outline because of me, because she calls it going rogue. I would go rogue all the time. And I would write, she writes, we divide up the characters, and the characters she sees best, she writes. The characters I see best, I write. And whichever character is the lead in the chapter, that's who writes the chapter. So usually it almost always turns out about 50-50, even though like in Sisters of Salem, we had multiple points of view. We're just going to begin a new duology, and there will only be 2 points of view in it. And there'll be first person, and we're going to literally go back every other chapter. Will be one character, the other character, one character, the other character. In that case, if something like starts to happen like that, I always call Kristen and say, hey, and she does the same with me too, and say, hey, Mercury, I just had this idea, Mercury wants to do such and such, and I know it's not in our outline. What do you think? And we discuss it like that. And most of the time it works out. Most of the time it's like, yeah, go ahead and do that. But sometimes she's like, no, stop it, write me out. She's like, that's going to totally screw up chapter 17 down there. I'd be like, oh, okay, all right, I won't do that then. But when I'm writing by myself, all the time, I just let them deviate.
That's super cool, I think. And it is really fun to sort of like, yeah, just let the process kind of like, you know, happen to you in a way, you know, just kind of like let the characters tell
They
you
do stuff.
where they
Yeah,
want to
they
go.
do really crazy stuff sometimes. But there's some crazy stuff going on in Out of the Dawn that I did not know was going to happen.
Ooh.
Most of it's about Ford. So.
Ooh, wow. Oh my goodness.
Mm.
This was yeah, like, oh my gosh, she like just jumped right up into the camera. Her name is Robin and she's being really, really bad tonight. I apologize to everybody.
Everybody loves a good cat tap.
Everybody loves a cat running through.
She ignores me like literally all the time until I am
And this,
doing
yeah.
this.
Wait
And
for my Scotty dogs to, oh, I can only see one right now. No, two. They're out. They're laying down over there asleep because they've been out playing. So I
Oh.
purposely made them go outside and do a bunch of stuff, and because they're bad.
So it's like,
There are four of them and they're bad.
oh, I just have one golden doodle and I shut the door so she can't come in here because she'll be like, I need to be on your lap and bark at you because you're not paying attention.
Yeah.
She's a fun one. I have a question about your series versus like your duologies. Do you not have more fun? Because I feel like you have fun writing all of your books,
I do.
but is it harder when you're writing like a duology because it's like more limited of just the 2 books versus you have, a series of like, 5 or more, like 10 or more? Is it harder to say goodbye to some of those characters, or do you ever feel that you might like come back and revisit them?
I prefer writing big books and lots of them in a series. It lets me like let all the characters talk and let all the characters show me what they want to do. I prefer that big time. And it is very difficult to let some of them go. Like, I don't really let the House of Night go. It kind of sits around with me. And like Tales of a New World, that too, there's so many pets in there that I love so much who then they're no longer with us. And that's also happened in House of Night too. But it's harder to let them go the longer you are living in a world. That's for sure. But then some worlds really grab you, even if you've written just a couple books. Like, I know that this series, it was duology. It was an escape for me. And because of what was going on in my world, that world's very important to me, the one I was escaping into. So I know it's going to be, I'm almost done with the second book, and I know it's going to be really hard for me to say goodbye to those people. But that's a good thing, though. That's a good thing. And then Lorelei King's voicing, she's the voice actress for the audiobooks for Into the Mist and Out of the Dawn. I love her. She is one of my very favorite voice actresses. I'm always so honored when she does my books. So I'll probably listen to her. I'll probably go back and put it in my car and listen to her.
It's a fun way to revisit.
Yeah, I'm always listening to an audiobook.
How much say do you get when choosing who's going to narrate your audiobook for you? And like how like how do you find somebody like that, like the one that you have who just like gets your work and performs it really well,
Well, I have pretty much say in it. I didn't at first, but I do now. And I really like that. I find I listen to so many audiobooks that I make notes about the voice actresses and actors that I like best. And then when I have a new book coming up, I talk to the audio people and say, hey, could you check and see if Lorelei King is busy? Is it possible? Could she voice this? If I don't have anyone like that, the audio people will send me like 3 to 5 voice cuts of voice actresses, and I listen to them and then choose one. Usually one of those, if I haven't made a suggestion, usually one that they send me, I find out I really like, and I choose that person. That's what happened with Sisters of Salem. That's what happened with them. But I really enjoy a great voice actress and actor, and I love audiobooks, so I'm always really into it, and I love listening to different voices and choosing the right actress for them. It's a good time. I'm glad that I have the ability to make the choice. or the power to make the choice.
Oh, very
That's really cool. That reminds me of because I've always enjoyed audio, but recently I'd say probably since my son was born, I've been like, I don't have time to sit with a book. I could listen like doing errands or in the car. But I got into, for years, my husband was like, you got to try reading the Dresden Files. And I was like, no, go away. Like, I don't want your ebook. And I kept putting it off. And then a coworker was like, we're doing a mini book club. And I was like, I'll do them, but only if they have audio. And they do. And it's James Marsters voices his characters. And I was just like,
I
oh
didn't
my
know
God.
that.
Yeah. So I saw him at New York Comic Con, and I was like, I know you as Spike, but I really love you as Harry Dresden. And he's like, thank you. But in one of the books, Ghost Story specifically of the series, originally he did not voice it because he wasn't available to do it. But later on, they re-recorded it with him because fans loved him so much. They're like, he's Harry. Like, but
I haven't. You know what? I'm gonna have to listen now.
Yay. I always love turning
Love
people
him.
on just
So-
because he's a really good narrator.
Yeah.
So I'm a big fan of it.
As I found Lorelai through Janet Ivanovich and the Stephanie Plum books.
Oh,
She's
nice.
such a brilliant voice actress for those books. She has made me laugh so hard that she almost will. Lorelai and Janet together have made me laugh so hard on the Turner Turnpike, going from Tulsa to Oklahoma City before in a rainstorm. I literally had to pull over the side of the turnpike. I was laughing so hard that I was crying and I couldn't see. They almost killed me. It was so good though. Yeah, I love a great voice actress or actor.
Very cool. I think we have a Q&A question.
Ooh, okay.
Dee asks, being in Oregon, did you ever get to meet Ursula K. Le Guin? I
did, actually. Yes, actually, I know her son and I are friends, Theo. I will even tell you the story about how it happened. It was real crazy. I had just moved here. Hadn't even been here like 2 or 3 months. And I was down in the Pearl District in Portland, and there was a art studio. And I love art, I collect art. And so they were having some kind of gala opening, they had some art, I don't know. I went in and I was walking around looking, and this very nice man came up to me and welcomed me and was chatting me up. And I said, I'm new here. He was like, is this your first time in? And I said, yeah, I'm new to the city. I just moved here just a couple months ago. And he's like, oh, fabulous. What brought you here? And I said, my job lets me live almost anywhere, anywhere I want to live. So, and Portland won, and I'm in Portland. And he was like, oh, what do you do? And I said, I'm an author. And he was like, he said, my mom's an author. And I said, do you think she's written anything I would know? And he said, maybe. Her name's Ursula Le Guin. And I was like, wow! I had to sit down. Okay, I had to sit down. I was like, I said, your mom's the queen of sci-fi. What? And so he even fixed us up. We had a lunch date. Yep. It was great. She was fantastic. She's as fantastic as you would believe she would be. She was great. It was a horrible loss to lose her, but we have her work, and she is a fantastic woman.
That's an amazing story. Yeah, she was fantastic. And like,
there's a stamp too now. There's a stamp, and her memorial service was down at our big theater, and it was so wonderful. And then afterwards, we all went to the library and had all this. Sorry, that's my daughter. She shouldn't be texting me right now. It was a great time. She's a wonderful woman. Theo's a really, really nice man. Wonderful family.
That's
Okay.
so great to hear. Oh.
Following up on that, Arcadia asks, which of her books do you like the most?
The word for world is forest. I took it with me to lunch and she signed it. That's my favorite of her books. Love that book.
So good.
It's little, but it's so powerful. It was like her. She was little, but she was so powerful.
Oh yeah. And something that I like that's a cool overlap that I can kind of see like in the long development of like sci-fi from her to like, now what you're writing is just like opening up the possibilities of sci-fi, because for so long it was sort of like narrowly defined as these stories about like military conquest of other planets or alien invasions or just like these super hyper masculine narratives. And I think like it's very exciting that there are so many different types of sci-fi to portray now.
I was just thinking about that just a couple days ago, because Into the Mist is a main selection for the Sci-Fi Book Club and Sci-Fi Fantasy Book Club. I joined that book club. That was the first book club I ever joined. I joined that book club. I think it would have had to have been like in 1973, somewhere between 73 and 76. I joined that book club. And I remember when I found out that it was the main selection for the Sci-Fi Fantasy Book Club now, it was like a little girl giddy, like, oh my God, are you kidding? And then I was like, man, I would have loved to read that book. Because they were all, it was like David Brin and Isaac Asimov, and then you get Ursula Le Guin, yay, a woman, and Anne McCaffrey, yay, that kind of, those kind of things, but they were very few and far between, as many of us know. But I like that a lot. I used to think about it when I when I started writing. It was like, did they write these all for like 12-year-old boys? Why is there no sex or romance, or where are the women, for God's sake? I mean, it was, and then I read McCaffrey and I was like, well, shit, I'll just write it myself. And I did.
Yeah. Ultimately, that's like the best writing to advice is just to like write the book that you want to read, or the one like the whole, like just fill the hole for like that particular book that doesn't exist in the world yet.
That's what I do every time. And it still surprises me that so many other people like them, because I really just write them because it's what I want to read, because it's what I enjoy. I really like it. I have something to say. And so I'm going to say it through my characters. And then I'm always like, oh, they liked it too. And when I make other people laugh, I'm like, oh my God, I made someone else laugh except for myself and my family. And my best friends, right?
So is there any time estimate or sort of like a ETA on when we're going to get the second volume of this, or?
I think we're going to get it right around this, between now and fall of next year. I don't have they haven't given me an exact pub date yet.
Okay.
But they're usually right around a year apart. So I have a really full schedule next year. I have 3 books coming out: the Hex You with Kristen, and then the 4th book in my Tales of a New World series, Earth Called, and then this Out of the Dawn. So they have to juggle. Publishers don't like you to release like this on top of each other. So there needs to be at least 3 months between books. So they're going to stagger them out next year.
That's impressive. That's like the pacing of Marvel movies, like every every 3 months. Like
It's a lot, that's for sure.
do you keep like a really strict writing schedule to maintain that kind of pace, or like what is your like coping mechanism for for producing that much, or does it just happen?
Well, I am, after all these years, because I've been published for more than 20 years, and I'm fast, and I revise as I write. So I don't only write at night. Well, like now I'm at the end of a book. I'll start writing earlier tonight than I normally do. I normally start writing between 8 and 9 p.m. and then knock off somewhere between midnight and 2 a.m. ish. When I'm at the end of a book, I always write longer and write more. And so I'll start like after it was 4:30 here when we started. And when we get done, I'll have dinner and then I'll go right downstairs to my office and I'll start writing. I write at night always write at night when everything's super still and I can't be bothered by people. Because if you work out of your home, your girlfriends and your family think that they can just stop in because, you're home. It doesn't matter that I have more than 25 million books in print. It does not matter what my schedule is. It doesn't matter if I have a deadline that's trying to kill me. None of that matters because, well, you're home and you have to eat. Come on, come out with me to dinner. I have to work. So if I don't start until they are home and done for most of the night, so it's just become a habit with me. Plus my mind works better at night. And so I write at the beginning. My schedule is at the beginning of a book, I try to write for 4 hours and I try to get 5 pages done. But at the beginning of the book, it's like slogging through mud. Or I like to compare it to getting on a roller coaster and it goes, and it's so hard going up that hill, so hard. And then somewhere around, after I get to around 100-ish pages, it starts going easier. And I can usually in those 4 to 6 to 8 hours produce 10 pages every time I write. And I don't do word count. I do page count. It's easier for me in my head. And then after I get to somewhere past the midway point, I'm up here. And then my roller coaster goes, whoosh, and that's where I am right now. I am averaging 15 to 25 pages a night usually, but it's also, I'm writing a lot longer and I have a lot of makeup on right now because I used to have dark circles under my eyes. I look like Joan Wilder at the beginning of Romancing the Stone as I'm getting to the end of a book. I haven't bathed. Well, I did because of you guys. Thank you. My dogs say thank you. My daughter says thank you. But I'm like snot crying, hair is like a fart, I'm a mess. I'm doing nothing but writing and living in the book world and that kind of thing. And I'm writing, then everything goes really fast. I don't try to write every day. I don't force myself to write every day until the roller coaster's gone like this. Like right now, I don't want to stay away from it right now. But at the beginning, this roller coaster part, shit, no, I don't want to go downstairs and write. It's too hard. So I have to make myself. But this part, you guys know that feeling where you're reading a really good book and you can swear that you're going to turn the corner and like run into a dragon from Pern. Or like I'm listening to Cleopatra's Memoirs right now, the really old one by Margaret George. And I just know that like Mark Antony is going to be around the corner. It's like living in the book world. That's how it starts feeling to me. After the roller coasters like this, it feels like I'm living in my book world and I want to get back to it like you want to get back to reading a good book. So that's where I am right now. But it takes like a lot of pages to get there.
That's such a great analogy. Like it just makes it, really crystallizes like what it's like.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great note, I think, to wrap things on. We will let you know.
Yes,
We want to keep you on schedule and get you back on the roller coaster. Great wrap up.
Right,
We
woman.
can't wait for it. No, we have a lot of praise from Coral in the Q&A and in chat saying she just wants to say, love you, PC. This book is so amazing.
I love
the
you
book is so
too.
good. And
Garcia's part of my street team.
Oh, yay. And also saying that you're always so fabulous so it's just that it's great to know that like you get so excited about writing and sharing your work with all of us.
I do. Thank you. Thank you guys for having me. I love it. It was really fun.
Oh,
Anytime, you're welcome virtually and in person. come say hi to the other
I would
coast?
love to. I'd love to start, maybe next year in person, maybe next year.
Ooh,
We could have a themed drink too, because it's gonna be out of the dawn and there's a lot of booze in out of the dawn.
I'm a really big fan of all of that.
Yes.
I mean, technically I'm on the clock now, so I typically only drink water or seltzer, but my go around is usually I have from La Croix, is it however you pronounce that brand? I always have the limoncello flavored. I'm like,
Oh, all right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for attending. This has been a really great time, and we're so thankful for our audience and for PC Cast to coming to speak with us. Please be sure to check out Into the Mist from your favorite library or independent bookstore, wherever you like to acquire your books. And yeah, thanks so much. And I hope everybody has a really great night.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. Good night,
you.
everybody.
Good night, guys.